an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, episode 14, Those Who Lurk Underground. In this episode, we find out that the Fuhrer is furious. One might even say, wrathful? My goodness. Turns out there's a real reason for that fucking eye patch. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. Max has also been very flexible. I had to miss an episode last week, and instead of trying to shove it into the week after, Max just said, tack it on to the end of the block. So that way I don't have to try and fit too much in, and I really appreciate that. So I think the last episode at this point is falling on, I think it might be September 9th, somewhere in there. So, guys, the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the fact that Armstrong does not tell our boys that Hughes is dead. Why not, though? I gotta tell you, I felt a way about it. I really thought I was about to get my scene. I thought I was going to have it. I thought we were going to do the thing where we have the uncomfortable conversation, the grief, the confrontation, the moment of, who did this? That. No. He just goes, Lieutenant Hughes, and then stops, or Colonel Hughes, or whatever. And then tells Ed, don't do anything rash, and then walks away. What the fuck, guys? Ugh! Just tell them! This is agony! Why can't they know about it? Y'all are making this so much worse. Literally, if I was in Ed's position, and I found out later on that he was dead, and I remembered this moment, I would really have some shit to say to Armstrong about this. I would be very salty. There is just... come on. The more this gets delayed, the more I'm this is going to turn into a fucking thing now. I don't want to spoil anything in Buffy, but there is a certain moment that causes a certain character to completely go off on a dark path. And I'm not saying this would necessarily be that for Ed, because I feel like it would have to be something more involving Al, maybe. More than has already involved Al. But I could see this being really one of the final nails in the coffin to Ed doing some crazy, stupid shit. I'm so mad. I really thought better of you, Armstrong. Armstrong, not Heartstrong. I guess. Alright, so let's start from the beginning, shall we? We open, surprisingly enough, with Colonel Mustard walking through a bunch of people who are all talking about him and his transfer. And it's sort of fun because he's walking through them and they're all just wow, he must be pretty good to have wound up here so young. He rose really quickly, and if you rise that quickly, you can fall just as quickly. He better, be able to pull his weight around here. I sure hope he knows what he's getting into. Do you see what he's wearing? Oh my god. It's genuinely starts to, get to that point. It's everybody calm down. And he's walking through this stoic, and I kind of thought he might be these fucking idiots. But instead he gets to the doors to knock and you get a smile. He's like smirking to himself. He has this real, I knew these bitches were going to be jealous of these shoes. Like, it's a vibe. He is so delighted that everybody is threatened and snotty with him because that's victory. And honestly, I need to have that attitude. Like, that's a way to be. I appreciate you, Colonel Mustard. So he knocks on the door and he gets a conversation with, he's going in. No, does he have the conversation? Is the secretary the one? Oh, yeah, okay. So, I'm terribly sorry, but your transfer was poorly timed. His Excellency the Fuhrer is on his way. He's conducting an inspection at Southern HQ. And then we transition to our friends in the sewers. This is chaotic. There is so much going on this episode in terms of like things being revealed and weird, like shit that we still don't really have the information to understand. All right, so I'm going to try and like bounce through this part a little bit more quickly because obviously what happens at the end is like what I'm going to need to talk the most about. And I have to imagine that my theorizing is going to get out of hand. So I just need to make sure I leave myself some time on that. So down in the sewers, it turns out that girl who I think they say her name is, Martel is the way they say it. It looks like her name would be Martell, like from Game of Thrones. But she is inside Al. And it's this weird thing that I don't really... They're using Al to, like, keep her put. And I don't really know... Is it just, like... Because it feels really like, oh, this girl can't compete. And I don't know. She was able to, like, make Al do stuff. And she doesn't do that so much this time. She doesn't really even seem to try to until eventually, like, the Fuhrer is there. They just, like, kind of seem to all not believe that she can take care of herself. And so she's inside Al, and, like, later on, they tell Al not to let her out until, like, basically lockdown so that she isn't able to escape and go and do stuff. And I cannot imagine what it is like, just the whole thing that she got to go inside Al to begin with last episode made me like really uncomfortable. And that was because she wanted to be there. Now you've got somebody inside you that does not want to be there, which really hits different. And then later on, she is killed inside him. I mean, and like, obviously that triggers the memories for whatever reason, which is really interesting. I'm assuming it's like a blood sacrifice is the payment for the memory. Like, I don't even know. But that has to be so traumatic. When Al winds up waking up later, they have taken her body out of him. But like, they don't have a fucking like pressure wash. He is still covered in blood. And honestly, it was pretty fucked up. Like, there was almost a look to it as if it were Al and his own body inside the armor and he got injured. And I don't know, just knowing that it's like somebody else's, it was just awful. This whole thing, I feel like Al is just being repeatedly traumatized. This poor kid, you know, he's being put through it. So these dudes are running around. One of them has Al tossed over his shoulder. I think it's Roa is how you say his name. The one that's got like a cow in him, a bull. And I love this. Then we go to Bradley, who's outside of this opening for Devil's Nest and just says like, what an interesting discovery for such a routine inspection. And the camera turns to him, and this man is standing there in this fucking outfit. You guys, I gotta screen share with you for a second here, because he looks so insanely jacked that I genuinely had a moment of just like, word? All right, Bradley. Look at this guy with the shadows falling down over his chest and his fucking like forearms and all this. And then he's got the mustache, the tough guy mustache, and that eye patch. Plus he's got his hands on top of what I'm assuming is like a rifle that's like He is standing next to Armstrong, the most giantest man. And he looks somehow like way scarier than Armstrong. A lot scarier, you know? I mean, you just sort of look at Armstrong and tell that he's a cinnamon roll, even though he's a very big man. But yeah, this whole look for me, I was just like, all right, you know what? This guy is actually pretty intimidating. And they go down into the sewers, and he's able to like, you know, sort of make it a whole, oh, fancy meeting you here with the Elric brothers. But it's clearly he knows some of what's happening here. This is when we cut to Greed. And Greed just says to both Ed and his teacher, whose name I'm forgetting, I don't want to fight you guys. Izumi, that's her name. I don't want to fight you guys. So, bye. And he just leaves. Oh, okay. I didn't know that was allowed. And I love Izumi just is like, that is pathetic. He just ran away. She keeps vomiting blood here. And Ed is really just like panicking. And I had to sort of be like, Ed, you have seen her vomit blood, like, I'm assuming your entire life. I find it funny how completely panicked he keeps getting, because I would think you'd be used to this, being around somebody who did this all the time. Like, she already had this condition when they met, you know? But I guess it's good that he's not used to it, or they've been away from her for quite a while. I could see, like, forgetting how bad it was, too. And then when you see them again, you're like, Jesus Christ, I lived with this? And this is when a bunch of the soldiers run in, and they have guns up on the two of them. And Ed is just kind of like, what the fuck is going on? And then we cut to Al, and she is like trying to crawl along the ground against his will from inside him. And this is when Greed walks up. And Martel is just like, nobody else, like, what's going on with everybody? And Greed says, yeah, we need to figure out a way to get out of here. Things have gotten out of hand. And then here's Bradley. I can't let you do that. And Greed says, what do you want, old man? And I will tell you what, this sounds like he doesn't recognize who the Fuhrer is. Like, not that he's the Fuhrer, but that he's Wrath. Is that correct? That Greed doesn't know what Wrath looks like right now? Is that because that was the vibe I got. He reacts as if, oh, this is the Fuhrer, but doesn't say anything about Wrath at all. And it like takes a minute. It's frustrating as you get older how your body stops moving the way it wants to. So I'd like to finish this and return home. And Greed just says, I've got an idea. Retire. And like I said, there's just a whole vibe to how casual he's being about this, where he doesn't know who this is yet, right? So I'm assuming that like Wrath basically came at him in other forms in the past. I think it's a really weird, this whole thing, guys, we'll get into that later. Candace says he's been gone for 100 years. Damien says it's talked about at the end of the episode. Right. Okay. Greed does say in this episode that Wrath was made after he went off on his own. Okay, cool. I have to say, too, when Bradley is like, it's frustrating how your body stops moving the way you want to as you get older. I'm like, no shit, Bradley. I swear to God. Y'all, don't get me started. How? Why are our bodies like this? We really, like, our lifespan being as long as it is, this shit should be a lot more efficiently set up. And you, like, once you're right around, like, 30, 33, that shit just begins to, like, hurt. Just straight up hurt for no reason, like, just because you're alive. Why? 30? That's, like, not even a third of our lifespan, ideally. I mean, come on. We could do better than this. I don't know. I just feel like we really should have gotten further along by now. So this is when we go to Armstrong fighting against the fucking, the beef man, Beefcake. And he punches the guy's weapon and it turns into a statue of Armstrong. You guys, this is the best thing I've ever seen. Ever. The end on anything. I just genuinely, like, can you imagine? Oh my God. Oh my God. I would like, I just want a power like this. I would love that. Just especially with a hater, you know, and just be able to touch something and then your picture's on it. And just be like, remember me, bitch. Like, I truly... Armstrong statuary technique. Okay, yeah, why not? Sure. He's posing, and it's sparkling. Oh, my fucking God. I cannot with that. Who comes up with this? It's so good. And this dude looks so irritated by it, too. And you have just had the pleasure of witnessing the famous Armstrong statuary technique. And this dude just looks at him, tosses the hammer over his shoulder like, well, this is worthless. And I'm kind of like, is it? It's still a fucking hammer. Like, I guess that the theory is, well, he just grabbed it and transformed it into something, so I guess it doesn't have any effect on him. And I suppose that's fair. And then he says, I guess my ordinary methods aren't gonna work. And then he pulls down like half his jumpsuit and fucking hulks out. And he gets a couple horns growing out of his head. And I love Armstrong for a second just being like, word? And then he says, now that's certainly peculiar. Which, sure, that's a way to react. So the two of them are like as evenly matched as it's gonna get. Armstrong punches him in the face, and his like gauntleted fist is on this guy's face pressing, and the dude just smiles at him from behind it because he's unaffected by it, which is truly very creepy. And Armstrong's eyes widen, and then we cut away. So this is when we go to a bunch of the other dudes, what are they called? Chimera, being shot up in what looks like sort of a dead end. It's kind of a weird thing. And one of the guys is being like, kind of shitty. He says, now eliminate every last one of these freaks. And normally I really feel a way about people being called freaks. But like, they're human chimera. I mean, if you're going to say freak about anybody, I feel like this is the fairest one to use it on. I'm not, like, especially considering what the other, like, chimeras that involved humans turned out to be. I really can't be that mad at them for reacting this way. So, yeah, we get to see Armstrong being, like, dragged through a wall, like, dragged down along the wall, basically. It's a real moment. He leaves this like furrow behind him in the cement, and then he punches the dude and gets him off him and says, you are a commendable adversary. And this dude says, and you're as tough as ever, Major Armstrong. Last time I saw you was in the Ishvalan War. And Armstrong is like, oh, well, I didn't think that, you know me. Well, as a former ally, I guess this gives me even more reason to kill you. I was kind of surprised, and I'm not like upset. I don't think it's like bad writing or anything, but I sort of expected after he was like, and you, Major Armstrong, that Armstrong would be like, Ben, is that you? No, he does not recognize this dude at all. He just seems like, oh, yeah, of course you know me. Like, who doesn't know me? I'm Armstrong, you know? And I was just kind of surprised by the fact that he doesn't stop and have a moment. You know, it's just more like, oh, okay, well, if you're like a defector, then extra fuck you. And he tells him to surrender. And then all of a sudden, all of these soldiers come up and they yell, Major. And he like jumps out of the way just as they fucking unload machine guns, which for me just doesn't seem like good policy. He does this cross of his forearms over himself, and I don't know if maybe that's supposed to be him guarding against the bullets, but it just really felt like he was barely out of the way before they completely unleash on these guys. And they're in the midst of firing when in comes Ratface, and he has sliced up a few of these soldiers, and he walks on through. Some of the soldiers remain and keep firing on them. But they just seem to like be unfazed by it and walk away. It's kind of a weird, like, I felt like I sort of missed some of how this went here. Because yeah, all right, he slices a bunch of them. He runs through, he says, Roa. Okay, that's what it is. He cuts the pipe so that there's a bunch of mist so that they keep firing, but the soldiers can't actually see him and aim, I guess is supposed to be the thing. And then we cut to Greed and Wrath, as we find out he is. And Wrath is telling him, I know that you have this like awesome shield and everything, but I have this awesome eye, and I can see where all of your weaknesses are. And I was like, that is a pretty great, like, ability, honestly. I mean, and it makes sense now why he has the eye patch. It's sort of surprising that it's never been noticed before. Like, maybe somebody knows about it, but you know, I'm willing to believe it. It's fine. And honestly, the whole like being able to zero in on somebody's weaknesses with the ultimate eye, as he puts it, I mean, that's a really scary power. That's something that actually, there was a book that I was commissioned to cover recently, and oh my God, I'm going to die now. I can't remember the name of it. Raybearer. Thank God. And there is a character in that who he can do something sort of similar, but it's more like medically, like he can see where your weaknesses is. And he winds up being turned into a weapon because it ensures that he can just win fights because he can tell what body parts are struggling, you know. But he wanted to be a doctor. And he instead gets from being turned into a person who can help. He is turned into somebody who kills instead. And it sucks. Like, you know, I can totally understand that this would be able to be turned in the other direction. So yeah, how many times am I going to have to kill you before you stay dead is what he says. And then we go down to Al and Martel inside being like, what is going on out there? What's even happening with Greed? And then Greed like walks up out of the darkness and he's only got one arm and it looks like he's just maybe the worse for wear. But then he completely collapses and just blood pours out of his mouth. And it's clear that that shit is over. And Martel is yelling at Al to open up. And Al is watching the Fuhrer say, I think that's 11. How many lives have you got left? And it was sort of surprising to me that the Fuhrer is willing to say this stuff in front of Al. He's got his eye patch back on, by the way, I should mention too. Because like earlier, 15 times you've died, my bad. Earlier, his eye patch is shown like floating, which honestly, when you think about it, that's like sewer water, and he puts that back on his face. Ew. But, okay, so he says 15 times you've died now. How many lives have you got left? And Greed just says, damn you. And I was like, if Al overheard, is it just supposed to be that this is like, I was going to say, oh, it's just like a foe that Fuhrer Bradley is familiar with. But no, this being able to be alive 15 times is a phenomenon that nobody should be in possession of. And I guess there's just the assumption that like he's speaking low enough that Al can't hear him. And at this point, Ratface and Roa turn up. And I love Ratface being like, man, as he looks at Fuhrer Bradley, and he's just like, I kind of wish we died earlier, which I found really funny, to be honest. And Roa is like, well, you can fucking run away still, like, go ahead. And he says, no, I have a stupid misplaced sense of loyalty. You know, I've been calling him Ratface because, like, he does have a rat face, let's be honest. But he's spliced with dog. So I feel like when I say dog face, it's a very different thing. Saying rat face versus dog face, like those mean things. So I don't want to call him dog face because I don't feel like that's right. But yeah, he says that he gets his sense of loyalty from the splice with the dog, which was pretty fun. So he tells Al, do us a favor, kid, and get her out of here. And what follows is a sequence of Al struggling with Martel inside him while these two dudes try and go at the Fuhrer, and Al is like holding his head in place because she's trying to pound the helmet open and off, which honestly was somehow like so weird and awful to watch. And we get to see these other two guys just completely sliced in half. It is really fast. They are dead in seconds. It is nothing. And I just honestly kind of felt for them both because they're giving it their best try, but it's nothing. I mean, Ratface, like, one half of him is lying, like, 10 feet away from the other half. It's really bad. And, yeah. So, Greed, here he is, and is like, well, that seems a little extreme. I mean, kill me, sure, but they're not coming back, so that was kind of unnecessary. And the Fuhrer is like, oh, are you getting attached to your little pawns? And Greed is like, no, you idiot. You broke my toys. Those were mine. You don't get to do that. Fuck you. And I was like, actually, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, I like that. It's not affection. It's possessiveness. Totally. That works for me. And then they start fighting again. It's just like over and over and over with the two of them. This seems really... There's a personal aspect to this, clearly. And I would like to know more about that. Because there's clearly some history going on. And I feel like Greed did something to Wrath at some point. Like, I don't know what's going on, but it feels like old energy. And this is when he goes up to Al. And is like, they didn't hurt you, did they? Can I help at all? And Al is trying to say, no, I'm fine. And Martel inside is like, fuck this. And she uses Al's throat to grab the Fuhrer, or she uses Al's hand, to grab the Fuhrer by the throat. And then, Fullmetal Alchemist. And we cut to commercial. I swear to God, this show with that. I need to get that sound bite on my phone and actually play it every time we get to these spots, because truly. So when we come back, she's still got him by the throat. He's like several feet off the ground, I should mention also, because Al is very, very tall. And all of a sudden, the Fuhrer just takes his sword and sticks it through the open neck of Al's armor and kills her. And this is when we get the revelation of memories, and it is really something. So the blood, we see it like splash against the blood rune inside the suit. And then all of a sudden, he is, in that like white space with that weird figure and that eye opening behind him and all of those like kind of ribbons of memories shooting past him as those weird little black hands grab onto him, which truly I am not a fan of those little black hands. Like, I don't know what the deal is with any of this, but those particularly, because they make him sort of pixelate and begin to disappear underneath them, feel really threatening. And at one point he looks up and he sees like a figure and he thinks it's Mom. And he grabs onto this hand that is outstretched. And then you see that creepy figure smile. And Al looks up and all of a sudden that figure is turning into Al. Like it's taking all of him off of himself and applying it to itself. I don't know how best to say that. It's robbing him of his matter, essentially. It's a weird... It looks like building blocks, too, the way they've decided to make it like square edges instead of, say, having it be sort of like a fade, so that it appears more to be like on a molecular level, is a really interesting choice that I think is a lot more visually arresting and just kind of interesting to look at. So we cut from him watching this like thing begin to assemble into a copy of him in front of his face. And then we cut to him looking out from the eyes of the fucking momish creature. Excuse me? Hold up, please. Wait. He was inside this thing? How does that work, though? Okay. So he's inside it because maybe... I don't know, because, like, he grabs that hand saying, Mom. And, like, honestly, I don't really know why he thought it was his mom, because I didn't really see anything that indicated to me that it looked like his mother. And that, like, that scene goes by really fast, but I just rewatched it here and I didn't see it still. So I am assuming it's like he's being tricked. And at the same time, is that the creature like taking his body in sacrifice for his mother? But no, because then how could he see through its eyes? No, that doesn't make any sense. No. So he's in this thing as it reaches out, and from where he reaches out to Al, it cuts and he wakes up. Y'all, he says to Ed, I remember everything. And I'm like, do you though? Because I kind of feel like you don't. You woke up right after getting to that spot. And shit continued to happen after that. You know, like that's the moment where Ed decides to sacrifice his arm, consciously making that decision. And I said this when we were in Ed's POV seeing this happen for the first time in a flashback, that the fact that the camera sort of leaves right before he is agreeing to the sacrifice, and he, puts his fists together to summon one of the circles, but we don't actually see him go back into that other space and actually do the transaction. And I thought that it was interesting that we didn't see that and that there was something more going on in that moment. And the fact that we are in Al's head and it cuts like roughly at the same spot right before Ed realizes that his brother is gone, I think. I have to imagine that is where the fucking good stuff is. That's where the shit about how maybe to get their bodies back might be. And he is out here telling Ed, like, oh, I remember everything. And I'm like, you truly do not. Like, you don't remember any of the kind of important shit, in my opinion. So he wakes up here and sees everything covered in blood and is fucking, like I said, traumatized. And I really understand. And then we get the Fuhrer walking up and being like, hey, I have to question you two before you can leave. And he does this thing here. Did you happen to trade any manner of information with him? And it's sort of weird because Ed says no, and the military didn't even get mentioned, not once. And I was like, yeah, it did though. Like, Ed's actively lying, but I think we're supposed to think that he's telling the truth. Ed says something specifically about how there are there are souls bound to armor in a military facility that he, like, you know, they talked about some things that were not totally insignificant. And yet he's like, the military wasn't even mentioned. And normally the way he says that, I would be like, oh, you're bringing that up in a way that sounds like somebody who's very, very guilty. You know, it's like the kind of thing where you're trying to, like, let's say you're trying to hide an article that you saw from somebody who's going to be upset by it. And they just go, what are you hiding? And you're like, nothing. I didn't even see that article. Like, that felt like the kind of response he was making. And yet I think that he is supposed to be telling the truth. It just, one, it doesn't feel like he's telling the truth. And two, I know he's not telling the truth. Did the writers just forget that they have that conversation? I don't understand exactly if I'm supposed to, like, or does he just consider that not important? Like, it was important though. Telling people about, like, the top secret fucking experimentation that was going on in this, like, supposedly unused bunker thing, that's pretty huge, actually. So I don't know. I just felt weird. Like, I felt like I was remembering more than the writers were. And it was a weird moment. I don't know if it's just me or if it is supposed to be that he's lying. But the way that Bradley questions him and the way he responds feels like it's supposed to be that, oh yeah, no, he's absolutely telling the truth. And Bradley can tell because of the way that Ed responds to his next question. Because first he says, have you given him any information? And then I'm wondering if there's a connection between your missing arm and leg and your brother's body. Is there any, like, connection between those two things? And Ed just gets wide eyes and doesn't answer. And that's when Bradley says, you really are an honest kid. So I'm assuming that was supposed to be, let me ask you a question I already know the answer to. And I will see how you react so that I can tell if you're lying to the first question. And the thing, what also is so funny about this is Bradley walks up to them. And this dude is like, if you say yes to this question, I will execute you right here. Did you tell him anything? Why would you? What? Don't start with that. You don't go into it with that kind of vibe, dude. Don't tell them you're going to kill them if they say yes and then ask the question. That's not the way you do that at all. Come on, man. Anyway, Ryan says, I think he was meant to be telling the truth at that part, but I guess didn't consider the lab stuff military talk. He says military, though. Like, I would go back if I could, like, without it being disruptive right now, to that episode and find the spot. But I am almost positive that word is used. So, I don't know. It's fine. Because I also believe that Greed brings up the military himself and is like, guess who made me? Something like that. Or made them. I don't even remember. And I don't know if Greed was even telling the truth. But again, I think the word was used. But doesn't matter. It's fine. So Bradley begins to leave. And he tells everybody to clean up and for Ed to take good care of his younger brother. And we go to Izumi here. And she's in her sickbed. And fucking Bradley is like, do you want to join the state alchemists? And I really fully expected her to spit in his face. And she does not. It kind of seems like she's considering it. Considering the way that she responded to Ed and Al when they said that they were part of this, I thought that was like... I mean, look. Really, the fact that she doesn't spit in the Führer's face is not surprising. She may have an attitude, but as somebody who also has an attitude, I know where to draw the fucking line, you know? And if I were to be face to face with somebody like Trump, would I absolutely, like, deadpan him? And, you know, yes. Would I actually spit on him? I don't think so. I'm pretty sure that I could get, like, arrested for that probably, right? Like, I think that's considered assault. So I would keep it in check. So I guess that's what's going on with her. However, when he asked the question, and she just sort of seems like, really? You want me? I was like, that really does feel like you're thinking about doing it, though. And we find out later that he's just like, she would make a really good candidate for a human sacrifice. And I'm like, what? I hope she does not say yes to this. But if she does say yes to this, I mean, I'm just not ever going to be mad at somebody who might have Ed and Al's back being part of things in a more real way, you know? Like, that, for me, it's only good to have more people like her. And I will say that when he gets up and leaves, she kind of like watches him as he's leaving, because he says, I'll keep my fingers crossed that when I do return, perhaps you'll have had a change of heart. And she sort of glowers at him after he has left the room in a way that I'm like, is she mad that he asked? Is she mad that he's insinuating that he won't take no for an answer? I guess it's that. But yeah, so at this point, we go to Ed cleaning off Al's armor and talking to Armstrong. And he says something about how Greed had the Ouroboros tattoo. And this is when Colonel Hughes comes up. And Armstrong is just like, it's nothing. And like runs away. And I was like, dude, you really, oh, come on. And Ed and Al have the chat about how much Al remembered. And this is when Ed asks a very good question, which is, if the Fuhrer is trying to get to the bottom of things, why would he kill everybody involved instead of holding on to them to question them? Which is extremely good thinking, Edward. I appreciate you. And Al is basically like, yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? Huh. And it seems a little weird that the Fuhrer himself would lead an attack against such a small group. None of this is adding up, actually. And then we've been warned, but we need to get closer. We've been warned, but is the beginning of like every sentence that comes out of this fucking kid's mouth, I swear to God. I know you said not to, but, I mean, we may die, but this could make things worse, but. So then we go to the Fuhrer, and he is telling somebody about his productive visit and the fact that I made an unexpected catch. And we go up and see Greed, who is being held in place in this sort of weird... So he's talking to Lust, first of all. But Greed is being held in what looks like a sort of... It's chains that are wrapped around him, but there are swords sticking out of him in key places that I am assuming are what are keeping him, like, immobilized because of those specific spots. It's just the... You know? I don't know. So he winds up waking up and has a couple of like things to say, about Lust. First of all, You can hit me with your ultimate spear anytime you want. And then says hi to Gluttony. Still haven't found the right diet for you yet. I'm like, no, I think you have. I think you found the perfect diet for him. And then says to Envy, ugh, get a new outfit. And I cannot believe how easy it was to like poke at Envy. It was really funny, actually. He just keeps saying shit about like Envy's look and then says something about how you aren't going to show us what you really look like, huh? Because you're fucking hideous. And I was like, ooh, what does Envy really look like? Like, this look works for me. I think it's a really cool and interesting look. And I like the androgynous thing that's going on. I'm moving my mic down a little bit. Forgive me, everybody. But yeah, I like this suggestion because Envy can shapeshift. Right? We have seen this happen. So it never really occurred to me that this shape might be a shift. Also, I assumed this was default shape. But Envy is called the green-eyed monster. So I'm really hoping that Envy is in fact actually a green-eyed monster. We will see. Damien says, fun fact that pillar greed is chained to is censored. The original Japanese manga has greed tied to a cross. The international version chained it. Ooh, they changed that. And the anime followed the international manga release design. Huh. They really are going heavy with like the religious imagery and thematics in this, huh? It's weird. I just never expected that coming into this. So, and he brings up Sloth, and they're like, you know, we have to keep him working, and we see Sloth, and he's got this, like, weird sort of mask with red eyes, but I don't know if that's actually a mask and red eyes, or if that's just the thing that the show does when it's giving you a artful interpretation of somebody who's scary, because they do that all the time, you know? So this is when he's talking about the Führer being created by, or no, is he saying it? Oh, maybe it's Lust who's talking here. Yeah, he says, who's the new addition? And Bradley says, I am Wrath the Furious. And Lust says, the humans know him as the leader of Amestris. Guys, have we heard the name Amestris? I feel like maybe we've seen it on a map. I don't remember anybody actually saying the name. I hope I'm saying it right, because I'm like reading it from the subtitle, but like that is how little I remember this ever being mentioned, is I don't even know if I'm saying it right. The truth is he was created by Father for the final stage of the plan. And Greed is totally blown away because he is a homunculus and yet he can age. I guess all of them are homunculi. I'm assuming, like, they were all created. But it's, like, it's interesting to me that they're all created, but they have such different abilities, you know? Like, I guess, if we've got the ultimate shield, the ultimate eye, the ultimate spear, what is Envy's weapon? I don't think it's specifically mentioned. Is it? So yeah, this is shut your worthless trap, ugly. Oh, that's a scary face. Go on and let it out. Why don't you show us what you really look like, you hideous freak? And I was like, God damn, he just really went for it there, didn't you? So then we get the Father speaking. Stop your nonsense, both of you. And everyone turns as if they did not realize that he was there, which I thought was kind of surprising. And he is sitting in this chair. All I could think of, guys, in this moment was the three-eyed raven up in the north and him being attached to all these fucking trees. This is what this guy looked like. He is in this chair with like every kind of fucking pipeline leading into the back of it in such a way that I am assuming the shit is keeping him alive somehow. I don't know. But There's just a very creepy vibe, and he's reading a book, and we get to see that he has a very sharp beard, and is kind of like, looks in the way that one would picture a traditional, like, Judeo-Christian god. There's just, that's the look he's got. You know what I'm saying? And he asks Greed, like, why would you betray me? You are a piece of my soul. And Greed is like, you literally created me to be greedy. Like, why would I not do this? That's a weird question, actually. And I thought that that was pretty valid. So the father says, if I were to ask you to return and work for me again, and Greed just says, never! And the father says, as you wish. And all of a sudden, this, like, trap door opens under Greed. And honestly, guys, so we see the, like, gears turn, and this door opens, and there's, like, a fucking molten pit of lava. And then the, like, pit comes, like, up out of it. Like, it's like it's in a... And he says, geez, talk about cheesy. And I fucking burst out laughing. That really just caught me off guard. Him, like, lampshading this ridiculous Bond villain sort of, like, it was really funny. Honestly, I'm, like, kind of Team Greed right now, and I'm a little sad that he winds up getting, I guess, melted down to make a new homunculus that is more malleable, I suppose. But yeah, he gets dropped into this vat, screaming about, why don't you come in? The water's fine. Nice and hot like the flames in hell. I'm just like, okay, is hell real then? I think, because I couldn't tell if he was just, like, making a joke, because that's where we're supposed to be from. But I'm assuming that this is actually true. Actual hell. That's a real thing. And then Father lifts his hand and says, return to the depths and rejoin my soul. Return, Greed. And Greed, grinning maniacally and screaming in a way that isn't even like pain, it's more like, haha, fuck you, says, just don't be mad when I give you a stomach ache. And then we see, like, this, what looks kind of like blood, but it's a little bit too clear for that, drip down from one of these hoses into a glass. And we have the father holding it up and saying, I will now drink to your undying loyalty. And he pours it down his throat, and he also has that weird, like, red eye thing going on. And that is that. I do not know what the fuck. I said that I was going to leave myself all this time to theorize on this. And then I started to get mad because I realized how close to the end I was. And then I asked myself, well, what would your theory be? And I was like, no idea. No idea. Nothing. I got nothing. Like, there's a real, like, I am God energy. And not I'm the devil. It feels like he's God in the, like, the white God sort of way that they say in the Dresden series, which I find funny. And is just either really corrupted, or he's just been taken over, perhaps, by somebody, and he looks like that, but he isn't. Or just is also a shapeshifter and can take on any appearance, and who knows? But the fact that he's so washed out, I don't know. It could just be that he doesn't have he's working towards something. And I don't know what it is that he even wants. Like, if you're God, you can just take the world. Like, I'm pretty sure that's how that works. And he doesn't. So what does he want then? Like, here's the thing, too, that I run into this a lot with various properties that have really powerful characters. I will start to be like, well, if they wanted to do XYZ, they could just do XYZ because they have like huge powers. And then I'll find out that there's like some sort of weird restriction on why they can't do, XYZ. Like, I can't interfere with free will, or I'm not allowed to interfere because I made a deal with so-and-so, or whatever. So I'm like thinking that he is not restrained in any way, but he must be. There's got to be something that's holding him back. And yeah. So this whole this thing, it ends with him drinking, I guess, greed back into himself. And then we cut to Bradley being welcomed by his kid, which really begs the question, did he really impregnate a woman? If he is a homunculus who can age, I am assuming that he can also come. So, what I want to know is this a real kid? Like, is this kid part of the plan? Is he the Antichrist, essentially, is what I'm asking you guys? Is he Damon? What is his name, actually? Selim. What does Selim mean? I don't know where to go with Selim. It's a weird name. Or no, that's his kid. And what's his wife's name? But yeah, he says the same thing to him about how, it was a very productive trip, as he was, saying in his report, which I found pretty funny. Oh my God, guys, you will not believe this. So his son is labeled Selim in the subtitles. But then, when his wife speaks, the subtitles just say Bradley's wife. Wow. Okay, she doesn't even get a fucking name? Come on. Come on. Give the bitch a name. That is just really rude. I don't like it. Fuck y'all. Shit. So, yeah, this is when his kid, first his wife is like, you should just retire. And he's like, I'm not that old. Shut up. And she's like, and then he tells Selim, I ran into the Fullmetal Alchemist. And Selim is like, that is rad. I want to meet him. Please introduce me. And he says, he's the youngest state alchemist. That is so cool. He's not much older than me. Maybe I can learn alchemy as well. And his mom asks, why would you want to learn something like that? What the fuck kind of question is that? Why would you want to learn magic, child? What are you talking about? Who would not want to learn magic? Why doesn't everybody try and learn it? What are you talking about? Why would you even ask that? Of course he wants to learn it. Honestly, him being like, maybe I can learn because he's not that much older than me. Well, apparently, Edward Elric started learning 5 years ago, so you are behind. So get started now, kid. What's your deal? I'm assuming he's being kept from learning it because maybe he's the Antichrist. I don't know. But honestly, why would you want to learn something like that? Oh, I don't know. Because my dad is the biggest badass the world has ever known and runs around fucking I thought he was an alchemist. You guys remember that episode where he takes down what's-his-face? And I'm realizing now that shit was not alchemy. Is he an alchemist in any way? Or is he not meant to be an alchemist at all? I actually don't know this. Michael says she wants him to grow up to be a dentist. Honestly. Salim is the pronunciation. Thank you, Damien. Let's see. They don't want to spoil her name, says Ryan. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe she's got a wild name. Maybe she's, what's the other one? We've got lust. We've got envy. We've got greed. We've got wrath. We've got sloth. Who's left? I know there's another one. Shit. I don't remember. I can just look it up, like what the 7 deadly sins are. I'm sure. Oh, God damn it. There's 7. There's 2 more. I said there was 1 more. No, there's 2 more. Damien says pride. Right. Yeah. Look, if any deadly sin is bringing me down, it's fucking pride, man. That is just going to be the end of me. That's it. Done. I would be curious, actually, you guys, which of the deadly sins you think would bring you down? Like, what would be your thing that you just completely like, oh, yep, you got me, actually. I'm not fighting this even because that feels right. Because just, you know, I could say sloth, but honestly, that's not true. I work a lot. I work really hard. So as much as like I'm not out here running marathons or anything, I am still somebody who does a lot. So that doesn't really apply at all. Gluttony, maybe, but I go in and out of that one. Pride, I feel like my entire life, that's been a very consistent trait. Gluttony has been up and down. Pride, pretty standard the whole time. I'm just, you know. Michael says, I already made a 7 dwarves joke. You didn't list gluttony. Oh, I didn't. Oh, okay. I thought I did. I must have said sloth. Ryan says, I do a lot, but I don't want to. Yeah, I guess that's a good measure, Ryan, because I do a lot and I want to do more than I'm doing and literally physically can't. So sloth is certainly not the one for me. But, you know, with gluttony, I mean, I eat a lot, but I would eat a lot more if I could. So maybe gluttony, I don't know. I just feel like pride's more consistent for me, though. So, yeah, anyway, the show ends with Salim walking away talking about getting his state alchemist license. And Bradley says, you never know. Maybe you will help me out someday. And I'm like, okay. Either A, this kid's the Antichrist, or B, Bradley is going to sacrifice his own child. I'm going to go with B. The Antichrist would be pretty fun, but I'm not super into like little kids being like dangerous in stories most of the time. Like that can be done well, but it's usually done really cheaply and like kind of being willing to sacrifice his own child. That's a whole other thing. And that feels right for Bradley. He just doesn't really seem to like give much of a shit. He's out here doing what he needs to do. Yeah, so that's the end of the episode. Okay. Guys, I can't believe that I'm only 14 episodes in. Honestly, I feel like this should have gone longer. Or I should be deeper in. I don't know. I guess what it is I'm used to, with a lot of the animated stuff I've covered, I do more than one episode at once. So I feel like I should be at least 20 episodes in right now, but I'm just doing 1 per. So anyway, all right. So I have to wrap, but thank you again so much to Max for commissioning this episode and for your patience with me getting sick last week. And thank you to you guys all for being patient as well. And I will be seeing you again on Friday with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.